Hello everyone, Ryan Jackson back once again to talk about residential receptacle placement. I hope that your day is going swimmingly, and I'm glad that you're back here to finish up part 3 of my 3-part series covering where you need receptacles in dwelling units. So we're going to focus on section 210.52D through I, which is bathrooms, outdoors, laundry, garages, basements, what is H? Hallways, and then I is foyers. And then we're going to talk briefly about 210.60, which is dormitories and hotels, motels. So let's go ahead and get our code books open, jump into section 210.52D, and wrap this thing up. Alrighty, so 210.52D, bathroom receptacles. At least one receptacle is required in bathrooms within 3 feet of the outside edge of each sink. Now, as you know, I paraphrase the code text. I don't copy and paste it. Number one, it would be a copyright violation, and number two, sometimes it's easier to read if we use, must instead of shall and things like that. So I say receptacle is required. It says receptacle outlet, so don't send me any hate mail. I know it says receptacle outlet, but I'm just talking about receptacles here. So you need a receptacle outlet, receptacle. So how many receptacle outlets is a duplex? It's 1. How many receptacles is a duplex? It's 2. How many receptacle outlets do you need for this bathroom? If we have a sink back here and we have a sink here in the foreground, we need 1 receptacle, provided that it's within 3 feet of each sink. So if this is within 3 feet of that, we're good. If this is also within 3 feet of the sink that's just out of the picture, then we're good, right? It doesn't need to be an individual receptacle outlet for both sinks. It could, in fact, it doesn't even have to be a duplex. You could have a single receptacle, right? 1 receptacle for the 2 sinks, and that would satisfy the code as well. So don't need 2 receptacle outlets, don't even need 2 receptacles. Like in this photograph, I could have a singular receptacle, right? Not even a duplex, right between those 2 sinks, and we're done. Now the receptacle can be on a wall adjacent to the sink, on the countertop, or on the side or face of the cabinet, but not more than 12 inches below the sink or countertop. So looking at this photograph, I took the picture, I didn't wire the house. Pretty comfortable saying that there was probably a receptacle right there. The homeowner came in and said, yeah, right, we're not putting a receptacle in the mirror, move it down here. So that's what they did, and yeah, that works. It can be on the wall adjacent to the sink, like that one is. It could be on the countertop. We could have like a tombstone receptacle. I keep on remembering my camera's not over there anymore, it's over here. So we could have a tombstone receptacle mounted right on top of the countertop. We could have a receptacle in the countertop potentially, we'll talk about that, or it can be on the side or face of the cabinet like this one, as long as it's not more than 12 inches below the sink or countertop. Receptacle outlet assemblies listed for use in countertops may be installed in the countertop. Now, be careful. These 2 devices, to the best of my knowledge, are listed for work surfaces, not for countertops. All right, and there's a difference. Remember, when we test receptacles for countertops, they pour a bucket of water on them. When they test receptacles for work surfaces, they pour a cup of water on them. So these things, if they're only listed for use in work surfaces, cannot be in the bathroom countertop. Have to have them listed for countertop use. Little note here from me, a receptacle installed in a drawer is not necessarily a violation, but it doesn't count as the required receptacle outlet. Remember, receptacles in cabinets don't count. So can you put a receptacle here in the drawer? Sure. You would want to have one that's listed for that, in my opinion. They make them that are specifically designed for this application, and I think you'd probably be better off using it. Otherwise, you'd have to get a little too creative, in my opinion. I mean, how do you support the box? What wiring method do you use? How do you secure it and support it? You get into some interesting code questions there. All right, so bathrooms, nice and simple. E, outdoor outlets. Simple on its face, maybe not quite as simple as we think though. Outdoor receptacles are required in accordance with E1 through E3. All right, 1 and 2 family dwellings. This is easy. Each one or two family dwelling at grade level requires an outdoor receptacle at the front and the back. Must be readily accessible from grade and no higher than 6'6". Okay, so let's talk about this. Readily accessible from grade. All right, so I'm standing at the dirt. Can I reach that receptacle? Well, no, not unless I've got the go-go gadget arms, right? So is that readily accessible from grade? Well, let's remember, readily accessible means that it's capable of being reached quickly, doesn't require me to climb over or under an obstacle, doesn't require me to get a portable ladder. So can I get to that from grade without a ladder? Yeah, I walk up the stairs. Right? Can I get to it without removing an obstacle? Yeah, I walk up the stairs. So yeah, this complies. It doesn't have to be reachable from grade. It has to be readily accessible from grade, and that is. I don't need a ladder, right? I can just walk up the stairs and get to it. So 1 and 2 family dwellings, one at the front, one at the back, no higher than 6.5 feet above grade, readily accessible from grade. For multifamily, each dwelling located at grade level that has an exterior entrance/exit requires an outdoor receptacle that's readily accessible from grade and no higher than 6'6". Remember that not all multifamily dwellings are built sideways. Some are built vertically. So if you've got high-rise, residential, you're not going to have outdoor receptacles at each dwelling unit. It's each dwelling located at grade level that has an exterior entrance/exit. So one outdoor receptacle somewhere. Doesn't have to be on the front, doesn't have to be on the back. As long as it's readily accessible from grade, no higher than 6.5 feet. So more likely than not, I'm going to have a receptacle up here by my front porch. Not higher than 6.5 feet, readily accessible from grade, right? Because I walk up the stairs, didn't need a ladder, and we're good to go. E3, balconies, decks, and porches. Here's where it can get a little bit convoluted and we have to read it carefully. A balcony, deck, or porch within 4 inches horizontally of a dwelling unit must have an accessible receptacle not higher than 6'6" above the balcony, deck, or porch. All right. There was a time where this said that it had to be accessible, that it had to be like within the boundaries of the deck, and it only required it if it was bigger than 20 square feet. Those provisions are gone. This is what it says. Balcony, deck, or porch, if it's within 4 inches horizontally of a dwelling. It used to say if it was attached to the dwelling. Well, that's not always the way we do balconies, decks, and porches now, because we need to allow drainage between the deck and the exterior wall. So sometimes we'll have a little half-inch or 1 inch gap. So need a receptacle, not higher than 6.5 feet above it. Doesn't have to be within the physical boundaries. So here in the distance, we can see that receptacle right there. That complies. Could I put that receptacle on this wall, but right there, right where my red marker is? Would that comply? Sure. I could stand out on my deck, reach it, good to go, right? That's not higher than 6.5 feet above it, and that's accessible. So that would comply. It applies regardless of the size of the balcony, deck, or porch. Again, it used to say you only had to do this for 20 square feet or larger. It doesn't say that anymore. So here, it's certainly big enough that I could go out there, and I'm not going to be able to do a lot of things on that balcony, but I can still plug things in and use electricity. What about this thing? Is this a balcony, deck, or porch? Well, my friends in the architecture community, they say that that's called a Juliet balcony. All right, well, a balcony, deck, or porch, and that's a Juliet balcony. Does that need a receptacle? Yeah, I think so. I think it does. Now, fortunately, it doesn't have to be within the physical boundaries of the balcony, because that could be very difficult. So I might be able to put it out here to the side. Not sure who gets to install that. It might not be a lot of fun, but there you go. Why on earth would I need a receptacle for this little architectural feature like this? Well, the answer is holiday lighting. Personally, I don't know, I'm bah humbug. I'm not really into Christmas lights myself. I celebrate Christmas. I don't put lights everywhere. My neighbors, though, They look like the Griswolds, man. If there is a surface, it's covered with lights on their house. And I guarantee you, if they had this Juliet balcony, they would have Christmas lights on it. And I'll guarantee you something else. If there was no place to plug them in outside, they would run the cord through the sliding glass door, and they would close the door and damage the cord and potentially have a problem, right? So that's why we need to have a receptacle out there. Love the rule, hate the rule, it doesn't matter. The rule is there. We have to satisfy it. Let's do a more normal looking example. Here I've got a single family dwelling. So you need to have what? A receptacle on the front wall, one on the back wall. This is the back wall of the dwelling. Does this receptacle satisfy both requirements? Certainly that's on the back wall, readily accessible from grade, not higher than 6.5 feet above it, so that complies. And it's accessible from the porch, or from the deck rather. So it's accessible from the deck, that satisfies both. What about this receptacle? Does that satisfy both? Yes, it does. So here is my back wall. I'm standing on the grade, which is probably right around there. I took this picture, but it was a long time ago, so it wasn't that high. I mean, I was standing at grade when I took the picture. So I'm standing on grade. I can reach up, hit the receptacle, as long as it's not more than 6.5 feet above grade. That satisfies the back wall receptacle. And I can walk up the stairs, reach my arm through the deck, plug into it. That satisfies the deck receptacle. Again, you don't have to love that, but it does comply. Same thing here. Does this comply with both? So here's my receptacle for this deck. Yes, you can see the grade right there. Certainly that is less than 6.5 feet above grade. It is readily accessible from grade, right? How is it readily accessible? Well, you walk around the dirt, and then you walk up these stairs, and then you plug in, right? That's readily accessible. You don't need to get a ladder. You can reach it quickly, or you can walk up there. So that's readily accessible from grade, satisfies the back wall, satisfies the deck requirement. All right, so there's your balconies, decks, and porches. Let's move on to the laundry. At least one receptacle outlet is required within 6 feet of the laundry equipment. Okay, let's remember that in 210.50, it says section 210.52 gives you the requirements for 125 volt, 15 and 20 amp receptacles. So bear that in mind when you read this rule. At least one receptacle outlet. Oh, it doesn't tell you what the rating is. Yes, it does. It has to be 125 volt, 15 or 20 amp is required within 6 feet of the laundry equipment. What if all you have is one of those stackable units that runs on 240 volts, 30 amps? Guess what? You still need to have at least one 125 volt, 15 or 20 amp receptacle outlet within 6 feet of the intended laundry equipment. All right, so here's my receptacle. That satisfies the requirement. Obviously, I want to have a dryer in my house, so I've got my dryer receptacle right there as well. 210.50C, as in Charlie, says that those have to be within 6 feet of the laundry of the intended equipment, so looks like we're in business. A couple of exceptions here. A receptacle is not required for multifamily dwellings if common area laundry facilities are provided. All right, so if I've got an apartment complex and they don't have individual laundry hookups in the individual units, then you don't need to have a receptacle for them. You go downstairs and everybody does their laundry in the shared laundromat facility, then great, don't need individual hookups. Same thing with two-family dwellings. So a receptacle is not required for other than one-family dwellings without laundry facilities. So here is my two-family dwelling. If they don't have individual laundry facilities, then you don't need to have a laundry receptacle. 210.52G, dwelling unit basements, garages, and accessory buildings. All right, so 3 different requirements here. Receptacle outlets are required in accordance with 210.52 G1 through G3. Receptacles for specific equipment, including security systems, do not count. All right, so you need a receptacle in the garage. Okay, cool, I've got my opener. Well, no, that's for specific equipment. That doesn't count. Or if you have a sump pump in your unfinished basement, that doesn't count. All right, so I hate to use the phrase convenience receptacles, but that's kind of what we're after here, right? We need a convenience receptacle in dwelling unit basements, garages, and maybe accessory buildings. Let's keep reading. Oh, by the way, need receptacles in the garage, Don't need them in the carport. At least one 15 or 20 amp 125 volt receptacle outlet is required in each vehicle bay, installed no higher than 5.5 feet above the floor. All right, it used to say you needed a receptacle in each car space, and then it's like, oh, I don't have cars, I have motorcycles, no outlets. Okay, give me a break. Each vehicle bay. But then that kind of begs the question too. Like I said, remember how I said this section is never going to be perfect? It can't be. So what if you have a two-car garage, right? A regular two-car garage, and then off to the side is kind of what I would call a third-car garage, but it's deep, right? It runs back, 30 feet or something instead of the 20 feet. It runs back 30 feet. How many vehicle spaces is that? How many vehicle bays? Is that 1, 2, 3, or 4? Well, it's certainly at least 3. So is it the 2-car plus 1, or is that longer space? Is that for an RV and therefore it's only 1 vehicle bay? I don't know, man. Like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I would say probably put 4 receptacles in there, and then you know you're going to pass inspection. But there you go. Here's my convenience receptacles, 1 for each vehicle bay, and we're good to go. Garage spaces that are not attached to an individual dwelling unit of a multifamily dwelling do not require a receptacle in each vehicle bay. Interestingly, for a very long time, this garage rule only applied to single-family dwellings. And then they changed it to say, okay, well, it should apply to 2-family dwellings as well, right, like a duplex. And then they said, well, it should apply to multifamily as well, but remember what I said earlier. A lot of times we build multifamily sideways, right, in townhouses, but what happens when we build them vertically? So this could be an apartment unit back here, and my garage could be this building here. So do I have to have a receptacle for each parking lot, each parking space in that garage? Well, certainly not. Garage spaces that are not attached to an individual dwelling unit do not require a receptacle in each bay. All right, accessory buildings. Bonus points if you know where this picture was taken. If you know where I took that picture, type it into the comments. Detached accessory buildings with electric power must have a GFCI protected receptacle. All right, we're not going to make you run electricity to your detached building, okay? But if you do, then you need to have a receptacle out there. And that makes sense because if you're running electricity out to your garage, out to your detached building, and you're not installing a receptacle, what are you installing? A light, probably, right? So you got a light out there but no receptacle. It's a tool shed, right? I don't need any receptacles. Well, what happens when you replace your lawnmower with like a battery-powered lawnmower? And it would be nice to be able to charge your battery out there in your little detached garage. So now what do? We don't have a receptacle. Well, we've got the lighting outlet. I could see somebody going to Home Depot or Lowe's and buying that adapter, right, that plugs in, which is a violation of 410.90. So they buy the little adapter and they screw it in. And of course, those are only 2 prongs, so now they're biting the grounding terminal off the attachment plug and plugging it in and killing everybody. So, look, just put in a receptacle, all right? You don't have to run electricity to your detached garage, but if you do, you need to put in a receptacle. And 210.8 says it has to be GFCI protected. All right, basements. Each separate, unfinished portion of a basement must have a receptacle. Cool, here is an unfinished basement. Very, very common in my neck of the woods. So 1 receptacle in this entire unfinished basement usually is all you need. But it does say each unfinished portion. So if you're finishing individual portions, then you're going to have multiple receptacles. Give you an example. You can kind of see from the framing here that you are walking down the stairs, and then you hit a landing, and then you walk down the stairs this way. And then you stand in this landing, and you're in a carpeted little space, and you're looking at 3 doors. 1 door to your left, which is this one. 1 door in front of you, which you can barely see the frame of, and this door right here, which would be off to your right. 3 separate, unfinished portions of a basement. Now, if I were to walk into this portion here, and I could walk all the way around the basement and come back out this door here, that would be one big unfinished portion, and one receptacle for that entire portion is all you need. I took this picture. That's not what we have. If you look close, you can see that this is a wall back here, foundation wall, and then we've got a like a fruit cellar underneath. And then this wall here is concrete as well. So when I walk through this door and I look over to my right, I'm looking at a foundation wall. So this is a separate unfinished space. It needs its own receptacle outlet. Inside this little room here is a mechanical room. And according to the energy code, I'm not an energy code expert, but this needed to have insulation and had to have a door because it wasn't a high efficiency furnace and water heater, so they had outdoor combustion air coming in, so it couldn't be in conditioned space. So that is all insulated and drywalled inside of there, but it's left unfinished, right? So it's insulated and it's drywalled, but it's not finished. So you need to have a receptacle in that unfinished space. And of course, going through this door here that's right in front of our face, separate unfinished portion that's the rest of the basement. So for this installation, I have to have 3 receptacle outlets to satisfy 210.52 G3. Some basements, you need 1. Some basements, you need more than 1. So this one, you need more than 1. Hallways. Hallways that are 10 feet or more in length must have at least 1 receptacle outlet. I don't care if it's 10 foot or 110 feet. You need 1. That's all you need. All right. You don't use the hallway the same as you use your bedroom, right? You just need 1 receptacle outlet. So if you get too long of a hallway, you might want to put in more than 1, right? So you can vacuum the thing. But hey, the code just gives you the minimum. All right. So you need at least 1 receptacle. By the way, when we're measuring the hallway length is measured along the center of the hallway without passing through a doorway. So let's take a look at this example. From where I was standing to that door, let's just do me a favor. Let's just pretend. Obviously, I mean, we can scale this out. We know that's longer than 10 feet. But let's just say where I was standing to that door is 9 feet. Let's say that was 9 feet. That would not require a receptacle, right? But we do have to make that turn, go all the way to that door. So yeah, that hallway is obviously longer than 10 feet. How much longer? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It could be 110 feet. You need 1 receptacle outlet. That's it. Almost through 210.52. The last one is I, which is for foyers or foyers, depending on how much money you make. I have a mudroom. So, foyers, larger than 60 square feet, require a receptacle in each wall space that's 3 feet or more in width. Doorways, side lights, and similar do not count as wall space. All right, so this is an interesting one. First of all, measure your foyer. If it's less than 60 square feet, stop measuring, go home, count your money. You don't need any receptacles. If it's more than 60 square feet and you have a wall space that's 3 feet or more, then put a receptacle somewhere in that wall space and you're done. All right, each wall space, 3 feet or more, needs a receptacle outlet. Why does it kick in at 60 square feet and why is it 3 feet of wall space instead of 2? Because it's not a bedroom. It's not a kitchen. It's not a dining or a living room. Do we use electricity in the foyer? Sure. Do we use it in the same manner that we use it in a bedroom or a dining room? Not really, right? So it's not the same rule, and it shouldn't be the same rule. But here's the deal. If it's 60 square feet or more, you can put a Christmas tree in there. And yeah, if you have room for a Christmas tree, somebody's going to put in a Christmas tree. And if you have a Christmas tree, then you want to put lights in the Christmas tree. And if you're going to put lights in the Christmas tree, you need a place to plug them in. Where does it end, right? So there you go. There's your rule for the foyer. The foyer, 60 square feet, 3 foot wall space, you need a receptacle. Now, you don't need to have it for every 3 feet. And remember, if you had one big, long, 15-foot wall space, just 1 receptacle, all you need for the foyer. All right, last section, 210.60, guest rooms, guest suites, dormitory units, and similar. 210.60A Guest rooms, guest suites, sleeping rooms, and dormitory units, similar occupancies, must have the receptacles required in 210.52a for walls and 52d for bathrooms. If a kitchen is provided, then all of 210.52 applies. Okay, so looking at this hotel room. I took this picture, but that was many hotel rooms ago. I don't remember if there was a kitchen or not, but let's look at the wall space. So 210.52a for walls, D for bathrooms. It's certainly going to have a bathroom, so you got to have a receptacle within 3 feet of the sink, and you need to have a receptacle following your regular old 6-foot, 12-foot rule, right? That's the general requirement. However, the total number of receptacles is the number that 210.52a would require, but they can be located around the furniture. All right, so we have to be careful here. It's not the wild, wild west, okay? We don't just lay it out, count how many receptacles are required, and then put them anywhere. So if I laid this thing out and it needs 5 receptacles, can I put all 5 receptacles under the window here? Well, no. I mean, if the permanent furniture made it so that that's the only place where you can put them, well, then I guess you could. But you lay it out, and you basically try to satisfy 210.52a, and you can manipulate those receptacles as you need without going crazy, right? You still have to have receptacles following the 6-foot, 12-foot rule, just manipulated as you need to, all right? We're not going to hold you to the 612, but you do need to try to satisfy that rule if your furniture allows it. At least 2 receptacle outlets must be readily accessible. Receptacles behind a bed must not allow the bed to contact the plug, or it must have a guard. All right, so here we've got 2 receptacles. That's probably only 1 receptacle outlet. And it says you need to have 2 receptacle outlets that are readily accessible. So there's one. You better have another one somewhere else, right? So, and no more important than it is today, right? 30 years ago when they put this rule into the code, it was good, certainly. Today's day and age, yeah, we're plugging things in, right? You got to have a place to plug in your phone and everything else. So you got to have at least 2 receptacle outlets readily accessible. And if you have a receptacle behind the bed, it must not allow the bed to contact the plug, or it must have a guard. Oh boy, how can I say this one delicately? Do you remember back in the 70s and 80s? Half of you are like, nope. Okay, well, I remember the 80s. For a different reason, I don't remember much about the 90s, but I do definitely remember the 80s. And there was a time when you could put quarters into the hotel bed, right? And the bed would vibrate around. So those things were plugged in. And usually the plug for those, the receptacle, would be behind the bed. And of course, once the bed is rocking and, probably don't need to go too deep into this, but yeah, we don't want to break the cord that's behind there. So you have to have a guard for the receptacle. Now, what kind of guard would you have that covers the receptacle? I had a hard time wrapping my head around this for years. And then finally somebody raised their hands and they're like, well, you just use an in-use cover, stupid. And I'm like, oh yeah. Yeah, that's what you would use. Yeah, so you just use an outdoor receptacle, right? A bubble cover, and that would satisfy the guard requirements. All right, so let's take a look at this picture here. Further evidence that artificial intelligence is not ready to take over the world as of January 12th, 2024. I asked it to draw me a hotel room, and it's like, here you go. And it's like, God, wow, look at this. It's so incredible. You can ask AI to draw a hotel room. You got your bed and your bathroom, and what the hell is this? You got a toilet right in the middle. Huh. Okay, well, let's take a look at this. You got to do your 210.52a layout. You got to have your receptacle in accordance with 210.52d, which is for the bathroom sink. And I'm hoping there's a bathroom sink somewhere around there, although, I don't know, maybe a bathroom sink could be better over here. So anyway, you got to have your 6-foot, 12-foot layout. So here in the bedroom, it looks to me like we would maybe have 2 required receptacle outlets, maybe 3. Where would you put them? Well, you're going to have to arrange them. Well, it's permitted to space them around the furniture, right? You don't have to. Could you just do the regular 6 foot, 12 foot layout here? Yes, absolutely. You'd probably want to have at least one that's readily accessible, maybe in this room, and another one in this room that's readily accessible. Once you have your 2 readily accessible receptacle outlets and the number required by 210.52a, then you're golden, right? You don't have to move them around, but you're allowed to. Put one somewhere here in the bathroom, and you're golden. Doesn't look like we have a kitchen. Remember, if we had a kitchen in here, then all of 210.52 applies, right? 210.52a for the wall space, B for the small appliances, C for the kitchen, D for the bathroom, E for outdoors, F for the laundry, G for the garages and basements, H for the hallway, I for the foyers, and we made it. All right, folks. I sure hope you enjoyed this series as much as I enjoyed making it. So, man, if you survived an hour and a half on 210.52, holy cow. I mean, who would have thought that it would take an hour and a half to get through 210.52? Me, I knew it would. I've done this too many times, man. Such an easy thing and such a complex topic. I had a great time chatting with you guys. I hope you enjoyed it too. We will see you on the next video. Be safe out there. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, and ring the bell.